Last week, I'm gonna begin with a little review, and then we're gonna say a prayer, and then we're gonna jump into this week. So last week, we started a conversation about jargon, and we went to the dictionary and defined jargon: special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group and are difficult for others to understand. We talked about the fact that we all do this, we all use this. There's legal jargon, there's medical jargon, we talked about some theatrical jargon that's a little bit ridiculous. We talked about sports jargon, and we all have this language that if you're talking to a sports fan, they talk one language, and if you're talking to a non-sports fan, they can't follow along. Just by virtue of the fact that the language we use is shorthand and kind of, it makes you sound like you know what you're talking about, but that makes other people unable to really follow you. We talked about as Christians we do this too, and we talked about how that can turn into a little bit of a danger, because we are different from everyone else in that we want to throw our arms open. We want people to feel welcome. We want people to walk in this building and feel like it's a family. We talked about the fact that when we all got here, most of us, the first time we came, felt that feeling of home or belonging or family. That's what kept us coming back. So anything we can do to remove any feeling of exclusion or any exclusionary language, anything like that, is helpful in making sure people really feel like they fit, that they belong, that they, I don't remember what it was. Somebody last week was talking about it and said, I came in and it was like, I don't remember, it may have been Vivian who said it was almost radiating, yeah? And talked about an accident she had gotten herself into, and they couldn't explain it, but for some reason, the person who got in an accident with her just suddenly turned around and said, hang on a second, are you a Christian? Because it radiates, right? Making sure that we are clear and concise about our language, and making sure that when we talk about things, we don't just leave it for people to understand in context, but we really give them a chance to follow along and to know what words mean, to know what we mean when we say some of these things, like brother, how that's different from the world's version of brother, family, how that's different from the world's version of family, things like that. So some of the differences we talked about last week regarding brother. We talked about a brother being a co-heir or sharing the inheritance with each other, that we're kind of on this path together and we're both inheriting eternal life, right? It's like I always say to my wife when I get behind the wheel of a car, I am signing an unwritten contract that I want you and me to both get to our destination in one piece as quickly as we can, right? And it's not about me getting to my destination and cutting you off, right? It's not about me, getting to my destination, leaving, forgetting what you want, just stay out of my way and I'm going to go, and then you can figure out your own driving pattern, right? We sign this unwritten contract that we're all on the road, we're all going to follow the same rules, right? And for the most part, we do. There's times when everyone gets impatient, but for the most part, we do that, right? That's why we take a driving test. That's why we do all this, right? We've all gotten our driver's license, which means we all pass the test, which means we all know the rules that we've agreed to when we get on the road to get each other there at the same time, right? As Christians, it's the same thing. We're all on this path together. And nobody comes to church going, you know what, I'm getting to heaven. Brenda, figure it out. Figure it out, right? We don't do that. We come in and we go, I'm getting to heaven. I can't wait to see Brenda there. I can't wait to see Scott there, right? And it's not a matter, it's this one little isolated, crazy place where there's no cutthroat behavior, or at least there absolutely shouldn't be any cutthroat behavior, because we're all going for the same thing. And it's not pie. If I get a slice, it doesn't mean you don't. There's enough for everyone, right? So we talked about the fact that when we say brother, that's what we mean. We mean we're together in this. We're taking on responsibility for each other. We're taking on a role of accountability for each other. We're, the question, am I my brother's keeper, that Cain asks in the Bible is almost a silly question, because you don't have to be your brother's keeper to be your brother's brother, right? That's not, it's not even a matter of really what a foolish question to ask. So this week, we're going to move to the word disciple. This is a word we use a lot. It's a word we use to describe the original followers of Jesus. It's a word we use to describe ourselves. What does a disciple mean? Yeah.
Well, I see the root word discipline in there.
Yeah. Yep. Follower. Uh-huh. Anyone else?
Or if you use it as a verb, right? So as a follower of Christ, it's a noun. But if you use it as a verb, then it's the act of when you disciple someone. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Almost evangelizing in that form, right? Yeah. Bringing someone else along for the ride. Yep.
I also see the word discipline.
Mm-hmm.
To me, discipline is something that it's cutting off what we're not, figuring out what we're not as much as what we are.
Okay.
I think that's kind of being pruned a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I see it as you're open to being taught. So like the teacher mentality, the mentor mentality, that you're open to being a student.
Yes. Yeah. That's huge. So we'll go to the dictionary, and then we're going to continue this conversation, because we're hitting on exactly what we need to be, right? We're hitting on that. So a disciple, according to the dictionary, is there are two options, right? So one is a follower or student of a teacher, leader, or philosopher. Okay? The other one is one who accepts and assists in spreading the doctrines of another. So I want to kind of bring our attention to two aspects of this, right? So we've got a follower or a student, like you said, not being afraid to learn, not being afraid to, one of the things that I think a lot of Christians have a lot of difficulty with is when someone says, what's the answer to this question? Turning around and saying, I don't know. I don't know. Right? Because sometimes we feel like we're supposed to have all the answers. Right? But sometimes it's way more useful to say, I don't know. Let's look. I don't know. Let's go here. Because the other thing I'll call your attention to is one who accepts and assists in spreading the doctrines, not of oneself, but of another. Right? When we talk about, evangelizing, when we talk about any kind of ministry that we do, Any minister will tell you, I did not do that work. I put my body in that place, and Christ did that work through me. He did that work, right? I did not save that person. I did not bring them to Christ, right? Except I brought Christ to them, and they accepted him, right? Any minister will tell you it's not that whatever they do, whatever good statistics they wind up with, are not a credit to them. It's a credit to God. It's a credit to Christ. It's not their doctrines. It's Christ's doctrines, right? So when we talk about accepting the role of being a student, accepting the role of spreading someone else's doctrines, we automatically set ourselves up for learning, for growing, for taking on a new role that we don't necessarily know yet. And I would argue that I don't know needs to be one of the key phrases in our vocabulary, because so often when someone comes to you with a question, sometimes you will know the answer, and won't that be a lovely surprise? But so often they're coming to you with a particular angle that, to steal a phrase from Scott, there's a good 80% chance you're going to misunderstand in the first place. So there's a good chance you're going to come at something and go, oh, I know what you're talking about, and this is what I want to, this is how I kind of and start explaining it, and then they're going to come in and go, no, they don't understand what I'm saying. They didn't understand that question in the first place. Right? Instead of, I don't know, let's talk about that. Yeah, sure. What have you read? Right? What do you, right? Taking it from, what do you need to know that God can teach you? Maybe I can help you find a verse. Right? So thoughts on that, and then we're going to dive into kind of some cross-referencing.
Great thought, because it's really about what the world says, reading the room. Jesus was the master at that.
Oh, yeah.
And rather than give the answer, read the question.
Mm-hmm.
What is this person seeking and listening? And then once they feel like they've been heard, then they're ready to really listen.
Right. Yeah.
Really good comment.
Oh, thank you.
Be a good class too. If you're kind of touching on something really very deep, reading the room kind of thing.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Tony.
One difference between, a disciple of Christ, as we are, and, a disciple of a particular philosophy,
Uh-huh.
speaker, or political candidate, or whatever. The difference is, there may be some speaker that I like, but it's not my responsibility to support and defend everything that person says. I guess the easy way is to go with a political candidate. You like this political candidate, but do you really want to be responsible for everything he or she says and does and all that?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the case of Christ, we can be, but it's so different than anybody else, who this other person, who I like, but I'm not defending everything he says.
Yeah, no, 100%. And notice how both brother and disciple, notice how both of those imply not simply, oh, okay, this is the role I've taken, but it's an active role in taking on some responsibility, right? If I'm a brother to you, I'm taking on your burdens. I'm sharing in your joys. I'm sharing in your suffering, right? And if I'm not doing that, I'm not fulfilling my role. So if I really want to be what the biblical definition of brother to you, that requires me placing import on you. That requires me putting you first. It requires me accepting responsibility for your actions, right? It requires me turning around and saying to, anyone who says, hey, I don't like the way that person's behaving, it requires me stepping in and saying, they're doing the best they can. We all do. We all make mistakes, right? And you don't know their heart, because I do. I know their heart. I've taken the time to get to know them and to share in their heart. I know their heart. And if you have an issue with them, let's talk to them, right? Let's leave our worship at the altar, go and make this right, because they will make it right with you. I know them. We're family, right? Sometimes it's advocating for someone. Yeah? And then in this case, we're taking on the role of ambassador, right? And it is. We are claiming that everything about Jesus is right. We are telling the world, yeah, sometimes we mess up, but you know who never did? You know who never does? Right? So I love that. It's unique in that this discipleship, this commitment is to perfection. Right? And Jesus was big on taking on responsibility, right? In one form or another. How many times did he say, take up your cross, take my yoke, right? What he asks us to do is work. It is work. And a lot of times that work isn't difficult to do per se, as it is to take the first step, because a lot of times that first step requires setting ourselves aside, right? And that can be the hardest part of any of the jobs that he asks you to do sometimes, is taking that first step to take yourself out of the equation and to know that you're an ambassador to somebody better. Yeah? I do want to drive over to discipline, because I have the definition of discipline here, because I think it is a huge part of how we become a disciple. Right? So the definition of there are a lot of definitions of discipline, because there are a lot of ways that we use this in everyday language. But I want to kind of take these definitions, compare them to Scripture, and whittle it down to, what is biblical discipline? What does that mean for us? So before I read any of these, what is biblical discipline to you? Yeah, Scott. Vivian.
I was just thinking, even when you're talking about brotherhood, both brotherhood and discipleship, I think the most powerful example the Lord gave to me is when the lady was caught in sin. And he said, he who is without sin,
Mm-hmm.
you pass the first stone. So that's really making us look more at ourselves in a different way, and also in our brothers and sisters in a different way. Because God created us all in his image, and he wants us all to be righteous in his sight,
Mm-hmm.
but we're only righteous through the blood of Christ. So we have to consider that in our relationships with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. My least favorite part of that story is that the person who was without sin was there. They could have cast that first stone, and I often want them to.
The only one who was without sin
That's right.
did not cast the stone.
That's right. And I really, in my walk in life, sometimes I really, really want them to, and they just don't do it. And if he's going to forgive, if he's going to, right? If he's not going to cast the first stone, who am I? Yeah, 100%. Yes, Brenda. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Scott.
To me, it's prioritizing. And I think God is good at that. Puts the Lord first, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And it's really following Christ. And like you're saying, I try not to say the phrase, I don't have time, because it's a lie. I always want to say, you're not a priority. It calls out my hypocrisy.
Yeah, right, for sure.
It's just rather than say, I don't have time, if you actually say, you're not a priority, it makes you go, okay, wait a second, I'm all messed up, And I don't actually say that, but when I think that, I go, okay, I'm all messed up. I have to retool, reprioritize, and always put God first, which doesn't come natural.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes helping define a word, you use another word and kind of bounce it off it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think similar to discipline is motivation.
Okay.
And, we're not always going to feel motivated to do the right thing. But discipline is different than motivation. It's not based on your feeling. It's just something you're going to choose to do. So, like, I've heard it kind of referencing, like, going to the gym or whatever. Well, I'm not motivated. You're not always going to be motivated. You're not usually going to be motivated. But a disciplined person goes regardless of
That's right.
motivation. So I think that's what we're called to, is to obey God, whether the stars fall, whether the mountains fall into the sea,
Mm-hmm.
whether you feel like it or not, in good times and bad times, in the desert and in the time of plenty.
Yeah. Something to add?
I was going to say, I know we follow doctrine in the New Testament, but my way of discipline is thinking like the Ten Commandments. It's like for honoring the mother and father, treating everybody when you treat, it's the golden rule situation, and not coveting your neighbor. Or anything more than your neighbor. Because you can supply that God needs to have me and this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard. I am going to be bringing in songs a lot. I think songs speak to us in a way that speeches don't. But there's a guy, Derek Webb. I don't know if you've listened to Derek Webb. He's a Christian artist, and he sings a song called "The Rich Young Ruler." And in this song, the chorus is more than just your cash and coin. I want your time and I want your voice, but I want the thing you just can't give me. Right? And so often, Christ asks us to just give him that one thing we can't let go of. 9 times out of 10, I would say it probably has to do with materials. 9 times out of 10, I would say it probably has to do with money or belongings or things like that. We tend to covet those and to keep them close. We pay monthly for someone to replace all those things should something happen, right? We absolutely, we guard our possessions closely. as a society, as a people, as humans, we guard our possessions closely. Right? Do we feel the same love for our faith? Do we feel the same love for eternity? Would you pay for eternity insurance? So I'm going to, because I think we've hit on all of these, I'm going to plow through them real quick. So definition 1, self-control gained by enforcing obedience or order. Getting your priorities in order. Getting control over it. And I got to say, I hate the word self-control, except in biblical context, because I love that the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. That self-control doesn't come from yourself, right? So it's interesting to me when people talk about pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, which began as a phrase that was impossible, right? And instead, I love when people focus on the fact that control over yourself is self-control, but you're not the one who has that control. You're the one relinquishing the control of yourself to be Spirit-led, right? If you're not Spirit-led, if you're not giving control over to the Spirit to organize your priorities, if you're not giving control over to the Spirit to motivate you, then you're not self-controlled. You're still trying to self-control instead of allowing yourself to be under control. And instead of allowing the desires of yourself to take a back seat to the best path for yourself that is laid out by the Spirit. So I find the word self-control really frustrating and interesting and all that, but self-control gained by enforcing obedience or order, right? Again, who's disciplining you, right? Who's enforcing your obedience? Who's putting your priorities in order? Because if it's you, I fear for you that you will be, I hope you will be more successful than I am. I'll put it that way. Second definition, orderly or prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior, right? Again, prescribed. Forethought goes into discipline. If you're not in prayer, if you're not in the Word, that situation's going to come up, and you're going to go, well, I did the best I could. If you're in prayer, if you're locked in, if you're abiding in, right, if you are abiding in the vine, then when that situation comes up, you know which way to grow. Yes, if you're locked into the Scriptures and they're written on your heart, then when that moment comes up, you know the right thing to do. Right? So if it's not prescribed, if you haven't thought about it ahead of time, good luck. Good luck with your discipline journey. I hope you have more success than mine. Third definition, training that corrects or molds or perfects the mental faculties or the moral character. And, you know, I always shudder when I get to the term moral in society, because I like replacing it with Christian, just because there are so many definitions of moral, right? That's your truth. kind of stuff. And I shudder when I get to the word moral, generally speaking. I replace it with Christian, right? Training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or Christian character. The fourth definition is simple, a field of study, right? Going back to this, you're a student. You're in a field of study. And we're going to jump back to that one in a second. But the fifth one is, like you said, the Ten Commandments, right? A rule or a system of rules governing conduct or activity. These are your and discipline's a tough one, because discipline can mean what someone is doing to help shape you, right? What we do to guide our children to learn the rules. It can also mean the rules themselves, right? The field of study itself, right? So as we start examining discipline, I want you to notice every single one of these definitions has one thing in common, and that is that discipline is a process. It's a process. Which means if you're not there yet, that's okay. You're in good company. I'm not there yet. Peter wasn't there yet. Paul wasn't there yet. We're not there yet. It's a process. But it means that every day we are recommitting to that process. Every day we are waking up and we are checking our priorities. And we're checking our ideas for, here's my plans for the day. What are your plans for me for the day? Let's cross-reference these and let's take off the things that aren't on your docket. Right? How do you need me to grow? Right? So it is a process. And the same way that me taking on the responsibility of being your brother can feel like a burden until I realize that that's way more people that took on the responsibility of being my brother. And that suddenly the grace that I should afford to you is afforded to me, right? I have a huge safety net, right? The same way that when we declare ourselves disciples, when we commit to this process, this discipline, there is a grace that automatically exists. That is a process. That this is not perfect. All it does is declare to follow perfect. Right? To accept and spread the teachings of perfect. No one expects disciples to be perfect. Anyone who does expect disciples to be perfect doesn't understand the word disciple. Because we are not what we represent. We are not what we represent. We can't be. We are not the teacher. But the good news is we don't have to be the teacher, right? Right? So as we sit and get frustrated with ourselves for not having the answers. The great news is you're allowed to not have the answer. You're allowed to say, I don't know. As long as you take it back to, here's who does. Right? This is my paragon. This is my paradigm. This is what I espouse. And every day I mess up. Last week I said something ridiculous and stupid. Right here, right? And I looked it up and I figured out what I did wrong, and I figured out what I misread an article. The article is called 10 Things That Are Not in the Bible, and it opens with, did you know that a lot of people claim that things are in the Bible that aren't in there? For example, the word Christian is never used in the gospel. And I totally misread it and went, no way! And I did a little bit of research and went, oh, well, I'm going to say that Sunday morning. That's great. And came up, well, Christian's never in the Bible, right? That's not what it said, first of all. It's not true, second of all, right? So we make mistakes. We say stupid stuff, right? But we represent someone who doesn't make mistakes. We represent someone who never said something stupid. Yeah.
What I loved about that last week is that nobody let it slide because it's important.
That's correct.
And second, I love that there was such gentleness and humor because I've said stupid stuff from a teaching perspective. I've said stupid stuff already today. And we all have the humility to hear it and go, oh. And the third thing I loved is you didn't defend it. Because there are people that you respect saying, well, remember this verse? And I'm like, yeah, Christian.
Yeah.
And you were kind of like, okay, I'm confused, but I'm going to accept that and move on.
Yeah.
I thought it was a beautiful picture of how the church community, God's people are supposed to work. This whole correcting each other, that's it right there. And that's how I should be with my husband. That's how I should hear things from my husband and from my fellow family.
Mm-hmm.
As long as people who are going to correct are wrong, and you're not. But again, that same humility that just pervaded that whole thing, that's it. That's being a disciple and following him. I just thought it was a great.
Yeah. And I think there is an aspect of what you said is exactly right. I think that we don't need to let something slide, right? That's not what, well, I'm not perfect, I'll let it slide. I'll let that be something that, everybody hears and takes home and they'll figure it out. No. Step up and say, I don't think I agree with that. I don't think that's true. I'm pretty sure that's not true. I'm pretty sure that's not correct, right? And does it bother me? Yeah, in a way, it bothers me because I got up and I said something here as a representative of the church that's just not true, and that bothers me. But at the end of the day, it also it happened. It got corrected, right? It got addressed, and I'm better for it, right?
You modeled for the next teacher who's going to say something.
Oh, for sure. We'll all say something, right? And we're gonna dive in a few weeks. We're gonna dive into how important it is for us to go out into the world and speak, right? How important it is for us to go out and spread this, right? We call it the Great Commission, another thing that's not actually in the Bible, right? The Great Commission. It's not, that's what we have called it, right? But it is definitely one of those that if you want to talk about, Jesus's instructions for people, right? His when asked, what's the most important thing to do? He says, love God with everything, right? And then the second is, love each other, right? Love each other as much as you love yourself. And, you know, my favorite Derekism is like, if you don't think you love yourself, you do, right? Like, you know, we're good at loving ourselves, right? So love each other. Find it easy to love each other, right? Love each other the way you love yourself. If you love someone and they are lost, how can you not reach out to them? How can you not evangelize? If you love someone and you have the key to their eternal salvation at your fingertips, how can you not share that? So whether it is the Great Commission or the greatest job we have or whatever, it takes a back seat to the fact that it's something that we can't not do if we are showing love to the world. If we are showing love to the world, evangelism is going to be a natural thing. And as we go out and evangelize, we're going to put our feet in our mouths. We're going to mess up. We're not going to be perfect because we're on the process too, right? We're on the treadmill improving. Yes?
And that's what I was going to say. What you said, we don't have to think that we have it all together. We don't have to think that we're perfect because we're sharing the one who is perfect.
That's correct.
And I love that you said a discipline is a process because we're in process.
Yep.
As long as I've been trying to walk in this way, I'm still a Christian in process, processing my discipline. It's how Ivan was trying to explain golf to me last night, which I know nothing about. And I was telling her about this driving range, and I said, one's by the river, and I said, they're just, hitting all these balls, and I said, they're just wasting those balls down in the river. And Ivan said, Mom, he said, believe me, they have a safety net. He said, a safety net is catching those balls, and then bringing them back up, and then using them again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about, we have a safety net.
Yep.
And God lets us try this discipline over and over again in the process of maturity, trying to be like Him.
Yeah.
But we don't have to think we have it all together to go out there and tell somebody about Him.
No. No. In fact, what I love is it's not all together here. It's all together here. This has it all together. This is all I need. This is my Swiss Army knife, right? My tool for every occasion. It's in here.
I find that mentality, and that's not us, but that mentality keeps us from reacting and allows us to respond, which is a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's many times where I wanted to say something and do something, but and sometimes people say, well, how do you do that? And sometimes I'll say, well, I work for somebody else. You know, and because of that, it's the biggest game changer ever. Not that I'm that smart. It's just that simple pausing, stepping back, not reacting. You know, thinking what would Christ do. It's just so liberating. You know, and usually the situation resolves itself, but without taking that approach, you know.
Yeah, right.
Being disciplined, you know, by the ultimate, you know, it's a game changer.
Yeah. Anything else before we wrap up in prayer? As we move toward a closing prayer for class, is there anything that anyone would like to pray about? Good, bad? Question mark? Yep.
Okay, Carl, did somebody mention Inez passing away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Becky's sister and her older sister passed away in
Oh.
New Orleans. And Becky's down there now helping them arrange things. This is Mary, the one, she had some health problems for many years, but she passed away. So Becky's tending to that this morning.
Yeah.
My mother, and then Mary, for her health.
Mary? Okay. Yep.
A friend of mine that we went to high school together and we were really best friends. She died on Tuesday. Her name was Julie Wiley.
Yeah, Tom.
Prayer for my aunt was lost last week, and they have funerals next Saturday. Her name is Dot
Dot.
Thomas. Dot Thomas.
And I'm sorry, Mark, I think you said it. What was Becky's sister's name?
Mary.
Also Mary. Okay. Yes.
Kennedy, she starts tomorrow, starts her 3 weeks of radiation.
Okay. Yeah.
All the women having a hard time today with tax return. One.
Yes, sir. Do you have something else?
Been to the hospital Tuesday night, and I was there since yesterday because I had pneumonia. Turned out it was double pneumonia this time, and they did a lot of antibiotics. So if you pray that I can fully recover, appreciate that.
You said it wasn't pneumonia. It was what?
It was pneumonia 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I went to a doctor for that, and then I was feeling really bad, but Tuesday night I couldn't breathe. So it turned out to be double pneumonia.
Double pneumonia.
Intravenous antibiotics.
Youch. Okay.
Praise God for my recovery and hopefully to continue.
Anything else we can lift up or lay down? Or both? All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for modeling perfection for us. Thank you for coming to this earth, for for the ultimate display of humility, stepping down from your throne and becoming nothing for us. God, we ask that we would have the ability to constantly check ourselves and learn from you, that we would have the ability to allow the Spirit to dictate our priorities, that we would have the ability to allow the Spirit to lead our understanding and our empathy, and that we would recognize that we are fallible, but that you have already forgiven us for everything that we bring to you in apology. God, we ask that you would help us when we mess up, when we hurt each other, when we make a bad decision or prioritize the wrong thing. God, we ask that you would remind us of your love, that we would see that. We want to lift up everyone who has passed on to paradise, who's already joined you. God, we lift up the survivors. We ask for peace in all these situations with Inez, with Mary, with Julie, with Dot. God, we ask that you would just help us to feel the comfort that only you can provide, that the comfort that doesn't make sense, the peace that passes understanding. God, we ask that you would allow us all to feel held in your hands in these moments when the temptation is to feel abandoned or to feel feelings of missing and longing. God, we ask that you would allow us to get through our grief by staying anchored in you. We also want to lift up everyone who's suffering health issues. God, we want to lift up Mary and Kennedy and Sue, and we want to place those health issues in your hand. God, you are the great physician. You are the one who formed us from dust, and you are the one who knows how to fix us. We ask that you would guide any medical professionals, allow them to be your instruments in this endeavor, and we would ask that you would, again, give us peace knowing that you are in control of those situations. And then, God, we also want to lift up everyone who's struggling today. We want to lift up everyone who is facing hardship or who is facing a difficult time. God, we ask that any time we face something that we can't handle, our immediate reaction is to go to you. And God, we know that so many times our first instinct is to try to solve things ourselves. God, we ask that you would take control and that we would take those to you, that we would lay them at your feet, and that we would allow you to be our solution. In all these things, God, we ask that your will be done, and that we would be able to set aside our own will and submit to yours. It's through your Son's name we pray. Amen. All right. Oh, Lamont, yes. Yes. Yeah.